Hello, hello, hello. I am Dr. Tanji. Today is August 28th, already the end of the month. And it's another day, another week for another session of Let's Talk Power Live, where we talk about power in education in real, actionable, and operational ways. I'm excited to be here this week. We're entering Labor Day. Although school has begun around the country, when I was growing up, Labor Day was the end of the summer, the official end of the summer, and the start of the new school year. Kids have been back to school already. Some are going to be going back next week. Wherever you are, want to wish you an incredibly fantastic, wonderful, productive start to the school year. But I also want to stop for a moment and recognize what just happened at a school in across the country. The first week of school, a young person decided that it that they needed to shoot into a Catholic school where young people were gathered for mass and cause grave harm. They killed two people, sent 17 to the hospital. Most of those who were hurt were children. An 8-year old and a 10-year old lost their lives. And so today, while I am thankful, and I'm going to share what I'm grateful for with you in a moment, I can't move forward without recognizing and acknowledging we are a country in pain. We are a country where our young people are hurting, and we are not doing enough to support young people in their quest. I had the opportunity to read some of what the person who caused this harm left behind. And what they said is, I'm very sad. I've been suicidal for a long time, and I can't get the help that I need. And I'm very sorry for the pain that this is going to cause those when I'm gone. This person knew, this person was sad, this person had been battling struggles for a long time. We don't know who knew what, when they knew, whatever they knew, but we do know that this person was struggling. And I'm very sad to have to even talk about this when school is just starting. But we are, as a country, who we are. And we have to decide that we are going to be what the words in our documents say we are, in actual deed and in our hearts, how we feel about one another. And so I'm excited to share with you what I'm thankful for. I'm thankful for having the company of our best friends. Friends are essential to the soul. And we had the pleasure this weekend to be joined by friends of ours that have been friends for more than 2 decades. So having them here brings me joy. And having them here is one of the reasons that I'm thankful for this week. And that's what I'm thankful for. As we approach our time together, want to ask you to pause for a moment. What are you thankful for? What's bringing you joy today? Always stop and pause to be grateful and to demonstrate gratitude. So there we are. Like I said, I'm Dr. Tanji, and we are here for another week of Let's Talk Power Live. This week, we're going to really talk about what middle schoolers deserve. They do not get what they deserve. So we're going to talk about what they get. And then we're going to talk about what they deserve. And we're going to share some leader power moves and some educator power moves, because this time is in middle school is tough. I'm going to say it. It was tough as a student. I had some of my best teaching and best coaching in middle school, and as a coach and as an educator in the classroom. And I had some of my toughest times as an educator in the classroom and as a coach and as a leader at the middle school level. So we definitely appreciate this time. We know that middle schoolers just don't get what they deserve, and we want to make sure they do. So who are we? I am Dr. Tanji, and I lead an organization, Liaison Educational Partners. What do? We are here, we exist to ensure every student gets the education, the excellent education they deserve. How do we do that? We do that by partnering with states, with districts, with individual schools and organizations to ensure those people who touch the lives of students have the mindset, have the skill set, have the tools and the resources necessary to ensure every student gets the excellent education they deserve. We look at that, I call it the trifecta. We look at curriculum, we look at instruction, and we look at the culture, all through the lens of power. And we employ a 5-phase process, an iterative process that focuses first and foremost on learning. We do a lot of learning. We collaborate, we partner to learn. And then we get into the place of planning. And from planning, we do application. From application, we do evaluation. And from evaluation, we do integration. Integration is the place of change because we want to integrate what we know has worked as we have explored plans and we have evaluated the processes that work. And then we say, you know what? Something isn't working. And so we're willing to go through the iterative process for lasting, sustainable change. And that's how we do that. And that's who we are. Every week, I ask you this question. Do you have a copy of your book, Understanding Your Instructional Power? What matters about this book? This book does what others don't. I'm going to say it. It asks you to consider your understanding of the very real influence and power you have, where you began to learn about that power, and how it shapes your decision making that allows you to do one of two things: to afford access to an excellent education or to constrain access to an education. I'm going to go ahead and share the book. Let me see. Let me get your book up here. That's your book link. There's the QR code, and we want to make sure you have access to the QR code, and there is the book link. Get your book. And when you get your book, tag us with hashtag instructional power. And then let us know that you got it and what you're learning. I had a lady get the book, and she would send me audio recordings of her reflections. One of her reflections, she said, I read chapter 4. And chapter 4 really messed me up. It really had me thinking about how I use my words and what my words really say about my thoughts and my beliefs. So go ahead, get your book and make sure you can have that conversation with me too. Would love to engage you in that way. And so people ask me, Dr. Tanji, Dr. Marshall, Doc, all the things, right? Well, what is this instructional power? What is it? Well, here it is. Here is what it is. Instructional power is, and it can be understood as an educator's use of their state, of their district, of their school or building ascribed job-related authority to afford or constrain access to learning. That's what it is. This is right out of the book. And again, this is my definition. There are others. I'm sure there are others, but this is the one I have decided works best for us. Something just happened on my screen. I don't know what happened. There it is. I had a very strange thing happen, but this is how I define instructional power. So go ahead, get your copy of the book. So what have we been talking about? The last 3 weeks, really been digging in to middle school and the special attention needed for middle schoolers to be and to feel successful. Now, let's be clear. Most of us went to middle school, right? Public school. It doesn't matter. It really doesn't matter whether you went to private or whether you went to public. There is this pervasive belief system, this pervasive way in which middle schoolers are described. They're described as hard to teach. I remember my own middle school years. I giggle about some of the really fun, interesting, exciting things I did. And then I grimace about some of the challenges I faced as a middle schooler. I'll tell you my story. I started middle school in one area, had lived there for since I was about fourth grade. So I'd lived there about 4 years. And then it was time to transfer. My dad had passed away and we had to transfer into a different neighborhood. I came out of a predominantly white area where I felt racially isolated as a student from fourth grade going forward. I felt very, very isolated because my sister and I were we were two of six total Black kids in the entire town, and that was back in the late 70s. We felt very racially isolated. Our teachers didn't know how to really fit us in. The idea of cultural responsive education was happening in other places and was just getting underway. So we didn't have the benefit of cultural responsiveness helping us feel part of it. Academically, I did well. Well, I was a good student. I loved to learn. And then when I moved into an area that was racially alike, but I found that it was culturally very different. I had gone into a school where the young people were already an established community. They had grown up together. They were each other's best friends since childhood. And when I walked into that environment, I came in as an outsider. That made middle school, an already challenging time, even more challenging. So that's why when I became an educator, I started out teaching elementary school, and then I moved into middle school. And my goal was to make sure the students at middle school got what they deserved and got what I wish somebody was able to do for me. So middle school is near and dear to my heart. We are spending the right amount of time at the elementary level, making sure that the sciences of reading, how we understand reading and getting kids ready to be readers and independent thinkers and learners. We're doing work in the elementary area. And then something happens. When kids leave elementary school, a lot shifts, and we're going to get into that shift. And then into high school, where there's a lot of focus on graduation and life preparation. And somehow in the middle, that messy middle, we have a wonderful opportunity. That's what we're going to get into for the rest of our time today. So if you missed it, in case you missed where we have been, we started the month in week 1 talking about joy, because the mind, the adult brain, was coming back out of its own adult summer slide, right? We talk about summer slide for young people. Adults have their own, educators have their own summer slide, because we're just not into the dailiness of education, the everyday processes of the teaching, of the managing, of all of the puzzle pieces. We're not into that. So our brain slides and we check out for a little while. And it's important. Our brains need that rest. But we got to find joy. Joy was a power move. That was our conversation in week 1. Then we also began to break down this real place called middle school. And it's really not just middle school, it's adolescent development. Something really important is beginning to take shape in middle school, in the adolescent brain. And they're at a very critical developmental space during this time. And we talked also about the need to rebuild community and not just routines, to think about what is going to be different about the coming school year from the previous school year. We know the numbers, we're going to get the numbers, but from an environmental perspective, what can be more than it was the prior year? That was our discussion in week 1. In week 2, we talked about middle school is not what you think it is. We have a lot of thoughts about what middle school is, but something else we wanted to dig into. And one area we focused on was that middle school roller coaster. A lot of times the behaviors are linked just to poor actions. And it's a lot deeper than that. What's happening in the adolescent brain during the middle school years is the second highest growth of brain development. First highest is in toddler years. And the second most impactful brain shift happens during adolescence. What's happening is the brain is pruning, it is shifting, it is changing. And so that's why you have those mood swings. One minute, they're your best friend. The next minute, they're calling you names I actually can't say here in this space. We've been there. We've been there as a student and as an adult, in classrooms and out of classrooms, leading buildings and districts. We understand that the roller coaster is a real thing. Next thing we realize is that bullying begins to take shape in a intensified way. 1 in 3 middle schoolers report being impacted by some form of bullying or another. We have seen over the course of the last few years that has intensified. Young people are being cyberbullied. Young people are being bullied in traditional ways, and it's creating toxic learning environments. People often wonder how bullying happens and why don't adults know more. What they don't understand, again, middle school isn't what you think. What they don't understand is about the multiple cultures that exist in middle school. You have the traditional school culture, right? The teacher-student relationship. You have the teacher-teacher, that collegial culture. Then you have a leadership culture. And then you have the student culture that takes place right under or in the face of educators and leaders in buildings that sometimes the leaders don't have privy to. You have to be attuned and in tuned to your students to actually be a part of the student culture. That's what we talked about in terms of bullying. And then balance care with challenge. We want to be clear. Standards matter. I'm going to say it again. Standards matter. They are the floor, they are not the ceiling. And it is reasonable for a parent or caregiver to send their child to school with the very real expectations that after 10 months, that child will have learned more and be able to do more than when they got there and the year before that. So having standards matter. But we also want to balance the need to hit scores, hit bottom lines with care, authentic care. Too much care, and we help students become helpless. Not enough care, and we don't allow them to be humans. We have to balance care with the necessary academic challenge. I'm a former retailer. Numbers matter. What they cared about when I was in retail in my area at the time, I was in accessories, and I was living up in Massachusetts area, and it was cold. So cold weather businesses, we wanted to make sure we sold enough gloves, a certain kind of glove, a certain color of glove, a certain size of glove. Numbers matter. They matter out in the world outside of school, and they matter inside school. But we don't want to only care about numbers as though our young people are cogs and wheels. We want to care about them, but we don't want to care about them to the degree that we remove their ability to demonstrate skill and knowledge. So balance is critical. And then last week, we began to dig into the idea that middle schoolers are instructionally underserved. We have this notion that one size fits all, and it does not. And then we talked about engagement. It begins to decline from 5th grade to 6th grade. 74% of elementary schoolers feel engaged. That drops to 50% come middle school. There's a reason why that happens. At the elementary school, students tend to have fewer teachers. And by the time they get to 5th grade, they have been in the same, most of them, not all of them, but they've been in the same environment for a longer stretch of time. And they have the lay of the land. They know the educators. They feel a sense of home and familiarity. And then they shift into this place called middle school, where it becomes about the business of learning. They got to have all these classes. They have these different teachers. The intensity of the content shifts and changes. And sometimes the environment is not conditioned for them to feel connection. So that happens there. And then they have this idea of, the design for diversity. We tend to design it for the kid in the middle and not diversity. I know diversity in our time period is a bad word. Well, let me tell you something. Diversity is something you cannot change. Whether you do something or whether you do nothing, diversity is a scientific, naturally occurring phenomenon. I dare you to go out into your backyard in your neighborhood, grab a handful of grass. You can look at each blade of grass and they will be different. Any parent who has had more than one child living in the same house, being raised the same way, understands diversity firsthand. I have two children. They couldn't be more different. They lived in the same house. We think we parented them the same way. We love them the same way. And yet, diversity naturally happens. And we have to begin to design for diversity as opposed to running away from it, regardless of what we're told about what diversity is. My soapbox. I'm going to keep going. So let's now talk about today's conversation. We want to talk about and really raise the critical factors that middle schools just don't get what they deserve. And let's talk about what they are actually getting. What they are getting is instruction aimed at the middle. Did a study a few years back and looked at nearly 7,000 assignments. And we found that the assignments, fewer than 10% of the assignments gave students opportunities for choice. 10%. So this mythical middle, this one size fits all, that's what students were beginning to get by way of assignments. And then we found in that same set that only 12% gave students the kinds of assignments that were relevant. And by relevant, I mean, and we hear this like real world. I want to use different language. School is a real place, and school has a real world feeling. What we mean by real world is the world outside of school. But when we use the language of real world, it really diminishes the reality of the learning environment that children are in at the moment. So I'm going to say the relevancy was low in that 12% of the assignments we analyzed allowed for students to grapple with the kinds of assignments that spoke to the real world in school and the world outside of school. That's what they're getting. And then their engagement drops. I spoke the other week about 17% of students have felt that their work relates to them. 83% said, no, this work doesn't really relate to me. And then the idea that they begin to, because of the lack of choice in their assignments, because the relevancy is so low, because their engagement drops, they begin to see school as a place that is not for them. They begin to see it as a place where they just don't belong. Now, we have laws, meaning that they have to come, right? So, but here's the thing, and we all know this. There really is an absenteeism issue in our country. There are lots of factors. There are a lot of factors, but one of those factors is about the learning environment itself. So that's what middle schoolers are getting by way of their learning environment and their opportunities. But what do they deserve? What do our middle schoolers deserve? Let's talk about what they deserve. They deserve multiple pathways of learning. They need opportunities to learn using different modalities. And I'm going to say this, and I know it's going to be a little bit of a feather ruffler. Technology isn't everything. Just because you stick a iPad or a computer in front of a child doesn't mean that they are more engaged. We want to have multiple pathways of learning, some traditional, some new, some something. We need multiple pathways and we need authentic choice. And we need that choice in three main areas. We need it in content, we need it in the products, and we need it in the process. Now, I've given you these three right now, the names of the three. But come October, I'm excited to share that we're going to do a deep dive into what they deserve by way of differentiation in our upcoming masterclass. And you're going to hear more about the masterclass shortly. But we need authentic choice that way. We need relevant learning. And then we need engagement through agency. And agency speaks back to the authentic choice. And then we need a school experience that affirms who they are, their identity. Remember I said, well, maybe if you missed it, you can go back and catch it. The identity of middle schoolers shape shifts because of what the brain is undergoing. They are constantly streaming and changing. They're trying on new identities. They're deciding what fits and what doesn't fit. But that is what they deserve. They deserve to engage in this material in a multiplicity of ways. Well, authentic choice builds agency. You have heard me talk about agency, what it is, how to do it. And one of the things I have found is that agency is something you must build towards. You have to make it a building district-wide understood way of operating. Otherwise, it's just going to be a conversation. And you're going to have pockets of what it looks like over here and pockets of what it looks like over there. And you might have some young people who are learning about their agency with adults who don't know it. And then they use punishment when young people decide to act on their agency. We're going to be talking about that in upcoming master classes as well. So let's talk about the power of relevancy. I want to give you one of these today. And again, come October, we'll be able to dig into more. So learning connects when it feels meaningful and future focused. Connect, know who I am. Take the time to know who I am and help me connect what I'm learning today to what's possible for me in the future. That's what that future focused learning is about. That comes to the content. Remember, I said 3 areas of choice. You have content, you got product and process. Content is the meaningful future forward stuff that they are learning. For those of us who've been classroom educators, we are used to the term, why do I need this? When am I ever going to need this? Instead of leaning into our adult power protection of our position, we want to be able to build agency by having an answer to that question. You want to have answers to that question to support a young person as they lean into your content. Remember what I said? Only 12% of assignments in one subject met the criteria of relevancy. Was it relevant? Only 12% of nearly 7,000 assignments. I asked this question last week. As an adult, would you stay someplace for an extended amount of time that you felt was not feeding who you were as a person? Now, as an adult, there are factors that make you have to stay, but you still have a choice. Our young people don't have choices when it comes to that. So we want to make sure that we are speaking to the content that connects to them. So, what are some power moves? Leaders want you to coach with clarity. Coach with clarity. Know what your instructional focus is. Make sure everybody else in the building knows what your instructional focus is. Know what it looks like when you're walking around. That brings us to watch for what matters. You want to coach with clarity. You want to watch for what matters. And then you want to protect planning to ensure that your educators are all able to be on one page, not cookie cutter, be on one page. That's your leader moves. That's what you need to do as a leader. As the classroom educator, what are your moves? Your choice and voice, authentic, beyond menus, more than menus. We think menus are choice and voice. Menus are adult-centered options. You want to take out the menus and let the child decide how they're going to demonstrate skill and knowledge. Then you want a flexible grouping. We've heard about flexible grouping all the time. You know what jigsaws are. You know how to move young people between heterogeneous and homogeneous and interest focused. Cannot emphasize this enough. Flexible grouping, flexible grouping, flexible grouping. And then text choice, type of text, the rigor within the text, right? The content of the text. So the skill, what they need to show you they can do, and then the content. How are they going to show you what they can do using the content? That is your text choice. Lexile variety, those kinds. Let me tell you, people laugh all the time. Picture books in middle school are a fabulous tool because picture books are a lot more rigorous than we give them credit for being. Going to do a session on that too. I'm going to do a session on how to use picture books at the middle school level for effective critical analysis. It's a really important tool, right? And then multiple products. We talked about that. Content, product, process. I gave you a little bit about content today. Going to dig further into the content, going to move into the product and process as we get into our October session. So that's your classroom power moves. So what's the collective power move that everybody needs to do? First and foremost, honor the range of academics, the range of social, the range of capabilities, of interest. Honor the range in your middle school space. Remember that instruction equals belonging. You want your young people knowing that the environment in which they find themselves has a space for them. And then you want agency and action, that choice and relevance, authentic choice, more than menus. Help them learn how to make effective choices and then allow them to make them. That's the deal there. So let's recap our time today. We know that middle schoolers deserve more than what we have been giving them. Remember what I said, 10% of a group of assignments demonstrated authentic choice. Only 12% demonstrated that they were relevant. There was a report by TNTP that talked about 17% of educators believing in their students. We need more educators believing in their students. Differentiation equals engagement, it equals belonging, and it equals academic intensity. It's rigor, I know that word, but academic intensity is really important. And then choice and relevancy are not extras. They are essentials. I'll say it again. Choice and relevancy are not extras. They are essentials. So that's what we talked about today. We want our middle schoolers to get more than what they are getting. They're not getting what they deserve. And these are the ways to get it to them. Here's a power tool. I've been really looking at this power tool And I want to make sure that you are looking at your power tool. Let me put that up for you to make sure that you are able to get today's tool. And this tool is going to make sure it's a building student agency tool. It is a leader-based tool that can help you look at your environment critically and then begin to plan for student agency to be actualized authentically in your building to stem the tide of imbalance and make sure students are not getting punished for something adults don't understand. So that is the understand building authentic student agency tool that's going to help you really lean into ensuring that the content, product, and process is authentic in your learning space. You heard me talk about this. I'm thrilled. Instructional Power 101. You want to learn about your power? You want to revolutionize the culture in your building? You want to get to that agency? This is the place to get it. 100% online, 100% self-directed, 7 modules. Go ahead, get yourself connected to Instructional Power 101. That's exciting. So looking ahead, you heard me mention it. We're having 2 sessions on our master class this year. We're going to have a leader focused session and we're going to have a teacher focused session. October 16th for our leaders, and then October 23rd for our educators who lead classrooms. Registration will open soon. The information for registration is forthcoming. I've been telling you, guests are coming, and I promise you're going to be thrilled about the guests and partners that I have coming to join us. So that's what's happening here at Let's Talk Power Live. I forgot. Did you subscribe? Did you hit the like button? Have you shared it? Please do all 3. Subscribe to the channel, like what you hear today, and share it with somebody else. We love to keep growing our channel, keep spreading the news about educational power and instructional power. And until next week, get your book. There's a link for the book. I'll put the link back up for you. Let's see, where is that link? There it is. Yep, there's the book link. Get your book. And when you get your book, take a picture with it and then tag us. We love to have you join the conversation about power. And until next week, thank you so much for joining us for another session of Let's Talk Power Live, where we talk about power in education in real, actionable, and operational ways. I'm Dr. Tanji. I'll see you next week.